Cleaners පවුලේ ආරක්ෂාව සහතිකයි.
Tonight, time for changes. Maritime law expert highlights the disadvantages due to Sri Lanka's colonial laws.
In the English law, there is no provision that the PO economic losses could be granted by the courts.
Bad signs. With oil slicks seen surrounding the submerged Express Pearl, authorities say test results will confirm soon. A good example to follow. International organic experts offer support to Sri Lanka and dispel the low-yield myths.
The new act passed banning hazardous pesticides. These are the policies all governments need everywhere.
We're hearing, Sri Lanka is going to starve. Actually, Sri Lanka is going to thrive. That is the reality.
Protecting lives. Following the highest confirmed daily deaths yesterday, experts say discussion underway to curb COVID-19 deaths.
Have modified the relevant guidelines and others to mitigate the things that will lead to the death of these people.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Thursday, the 10th of June, 2021.
කට උත්තර නැති වෙන්න කලින් සිග්නල් ඩීප් ක්ලීන් එකකට මාරු වෙන්න.
From AdaDerana. This is AdaDerana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanaka. Now then, stoking fears of a major environmental disaster, foreign media outlets have reported that oil is seeping out of the wrecked MV Express Pearl, going by satellite images released of the ship's location. Meanwhile, the crisis management company hired by the ship's owners say that the discoloration of the sea has been visible since the vessel's aft portion submerged. In any case, a report from the authorities is due in a couple of days.
The charred container vessel MV Express Pearl, which brought upon Sri Lanka its biggest marine ecological catastrophe to date, is currently sitting on the 22-metre deep seabed with most of its structure submerged. Meanwhile, satellite images show oil slicks around the vessel. Quoting these satellite images, foreign media outlets reported that the oil is leaking from the ship and slicks are spreading across a vast area. In such a backdrop, a team of officials from the National Aquatic Resources Research and Development Agency obtained water samples from the surrounding area of the ship to ascertain the truth behind the alleged oil leak. According to the agency spokesperson, results of these samples will return in about 2 days. Meanwhile, the crisis management company hired by the ship's owners says that the scene remains under observation with no signs of debris and no confirmed reports of fuel oil pollution as of 6 p.m. Sri Lanka time. It says that discoloration of the sea has been apparent since the vessel's stern became submerged and the remnants of the cargo in the 1,486 containers that were on board were exposed to water.
තෙල් කාන්දුවක් කියලා කියන්නේ අපි වතුරට ඩීසල් ටිකක් වැදුනා වගේ නෙවෙයි නැවකක තියෙන බංකර් ඔයිල් කියලා කියන්නේ තාමත්ම ඝන තාර වගේ සමුද්‍ර ජීවිතය තාමත්ම හානිකර දෙයක්. නිසා ඒ තෙල් එළියට ආව නම් අපිට තාමත්ම පැහැදිලිව පේනවා. එක්ස්ප්‍රස් ප්‍රෙල් ගිල්ල තියෙන නැව වටේ තියෙනවා නාවික හමුදාවට අයත් නැවක් තියෙනවා වරාය අධිකාරියට අයත් නැවක් තියෙනවා ඉන්දියානු බෙරළා ආරක්ෂක හමුදාවට අයිති නැව් දෙකක් තියෙනවා ඊට අමතරව මේ නැව ගොඩ ගන්නම ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන තවත් නැවක් තියෙනවා නැව් පහක් තියෙනවා මේ නැව් පහෙන්ම විස්තර ගත්තා මෙහෙම තෙල් කාන්දුවක් තියෙනවද කියලා
Meanwhile, wreckage from the charred vessel continued to wash up ashore. An iron buoy weighing over 250 kilograms was seen washed ashore on the Moragala beach in Kalutara last evening. This too is suspected to have been a part of the stricken vessel. Meanwhile, more dead sea turtles were washed up along the affected coastline of the island. Speaking on the marine catastrophe, Minister of Environment Mahinda Amaraveera stated today that the damage caused by the incident is far too great to be calculated. He added that the damages cannot be compensated in mere dollars.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වහලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම.
Sri Lanka will struggle to claim pure economic losses in the aftermath of the MV Express Pearl disaster, as the English law the country has adopted lacks provisions for a court to grant such. Now, it is the view expressed by maritime law expert Dr. Dan Malika Gunasekara as he discussed the fallout from the maritime and the environmental catastrophe with India Variamuatha on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24.
According to the Marine Pollution Act number 35 of 2008, we can seek compensation for all these damages apart from the insurance.
Exactly, because these two mechanisms will operate like separately in the present structure of legal instruments in Sri Lanka. On one hand, the insurance thing where the insurer, the P&I club, will come forward to provide the compensation as far as what the insurance cover has covered. But there may be some excess compensation or liabilities that may be mounted in courts in Sri Lanka. So for that, we need to sue the ship owner, because the ship owner in the insurance side, he will be covered by the P&I, but in other areas, he may not be covered. For example, if we ask for $1 billion, maybe that the insurance cover only $500 million. Then what about the rest? That particular thing that is not covered will certainly have to be taken from the ship owner.
When we talk about the present situation and the implications, what's the scope that we can actually claim through the ship owner? What should we consider?
If you look at the amount of pollution damage has been caused to our country as a whole, we do have claims, number one, to the marine environment. Marine environment extends not only to the sea and the seabed and the other resources at sea, but also to the other beaches and then who may be dependent on the sea resources, like for example the fishermen one side, then the hoteliers on the other side, and then there may be other claimants like whoever who uses the sea for recreational activities. When you claim against the ship owner, you need to be very specific of your damage or the loss, because I know that now there may be idea of people whether they can take compensation in this case. Like you have to be very direct, some physical damage and also indirect damages that may be allowed according to our law in Sri Lanka. So when it comes to economic damage, in the international legal structure, they have what you call the fund convention, that whatever the court cannot give, the fund will come forward to award another set of compensation from that. And there are also these P&I clubs where they also will contribute towards the damage, since we are not a party to the HNS convention. And also we have not brought in these provisions to our national law. We will have problems in obtaining such funding from those funds.
How do we at this juncture work to enable that all other avenues are open to us in terms of claiming damages to all aspects of life here?
Number one is we need to get our claims assessed properly. The country must invite the general public who are affected by this. We need to publish some public notices and call for their own grievances. Then we have to create the layers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, like that. What are the potential claims that we could entertain? This is actually an exercise that the government has to do. And thereafter see how we could proceed in obtaining the compensation from the polluters. In this scenario, the polluter is strictly liable for such a thing. Now, I understand the government is intending to have some international law firm to work with these things. So it's a very good move. That I had been advocating the idea not to go for an interim claim or a small claim at the beginning like we did in the MV New Diamond, because we are going to have it then.
Are we doing anything wrong at present?
I don't think that we are doing anything wrong with the claims procedure. We did do some mistakes in the New Diamond incident, so we should not do the same.
You mentioned about economic damages, pure economic damages, that Sri Lankan law does not entertain such claims. But if we are to do this in this case, how do we move about that?
What has to happen has happened. So we can't now remedy outside the prevailing law. And the present legal structure is not that competent to handle this sort of a scenario. So we need to look forward, we need to reform. Now, what are the economic losses like? For example, the expectant loss. For example, let me clarify, if a hotel say that because of the damage that has caused to the beach, our tourist arrival for the next 3 years will not come. And therefore, we are losing this much of a profit from the business. And also if they say we were expecting to have this much of a travel volume, but because of this incident, we couldn't do. That's a pure economic loss. So it's not a net income loss. It's a kind of a profit loss. In the English law, there is no provision that the pure economic losses could be granted by the courts.
Moving on with other local stories, global support for Sri Lanka's push to be the first 100% organic country is growing, with international agriculture experts saying that the presidential directive is fully achievable and that despite contradicting facts being circulated by lobby groups on low yields, Sri Lanka is set to thrive. International Director of Regenerative Agriculture Organization, Regeneration International, Dr. Andre Lau, revealed at a webinar yesterday that he is soon to present a detailed report outlining the feasibility and the steps needed to transition successfully to the presidential task force.
Sri Lanka's push to become a 100% organic nation has found more enthusiasm outside its shores than within. While some sections have welcomed the government's bold move, others have expressed fears that it may not have been thought through sufficiently to ensure a smooth transition. Environmentalists in the country have expressed cautious optimism, while enthusiasm among the farming community is low, mainly due to attempts by previous administrations to bring about the change having fizzled out or simply falling by the wayside. The last time a similar policy decision was taken back in 2016 to lay the groundwork for non-toxic agriculture, the program fell apart within just 2 years. Hence, the chronic pessimism seen across the board is not completely unfounded. Last month, Environment Minister Mahinda Amaravira said that Sri Lanka has seen its last chemical fertilizer imports, and despite the somewhat controversial nature of the decision, the agriculture sector should be able to kick its chemical addiction in the next 2 to 3 years. With that, international experts in the field of organic agriculture continue to hail Sri Lanka for taking the first step, and say that they're excited about the prospect of walking Sri Lanka through the long and challenging process.
So after all these years, I've been working in the industry too, of setting up awareness of organic. I am thrilled to find all of you trying to support this movement that we have entered towards creating Sri Lanka to be opted out of fossil-dependent, unhealthy practice of current agriculture, and we got a new direction of ecological agriculture. It's a challenge to change the course of a national endeavor, but it's an addiction. We have addicted our soils to these heavy inputs, and like anything addictive, the change must be abrupt but planned and supportive.
Meanwhile, speaking once again in support of Sri Lanka, world-renowned organic campaigner Dr. Vandana Shiva revealed that the poison cartel has already begun its attempts to undermine Sri Lanka's campaign using flawed science to push their narratives.
I'm so happy to join once more a webinar to support Sri Lanka's amazing decision to be the first country to go 100% organic. I noticed that the Crop Life letter to the president, they carry on with the myths. They are saying the reason you can't get rid of chemicals is because the main contribution to achieve self-sufficiency in paddy production was the productivity improvement rather than introducing new lands. It devastated 250 kinds of species the Punjab farmers used to grow. Punjab, the land of the 5 rivers, devastated today, a red zone for water, a foot of water loss every year. The other aspect that the Crop Life letter talks about is that we have managed to prevent damage because we have addressed the pathogens, the bacteria, the fungi, the virus. Fungi is what feed us, the mycorrhizal fungi. The bacteria are what take organic matter and decompose them and turn them into humus. The standing of Sri Lanka is partly because Sri Lanka has paid a high price. kidney failures, suicides, the new acts passed to prevent suicides, by banning especially hazardous pesticides. These are the policies all governments need everywhere.
Also speaking at the webinar was regenerative agricultural expert Dr. Andre Lau, who showed peer-reviewed evidence that he says dispels the myth of low yields.
Crop life, and I know that there's been some of the professors and other professionals already undermining it, saying Sri Lanka is going to starve. Let's look at peer-reviewed science in Ethiopia. And in every case, the compost achieved higher yields than the chemical. Paddy, really, when you look at most of the figures, is 3 to 4 tonnes per hectare using urea. We're talking about good SRI of doubling yields. We are getting, in some of the experiments, 7 tonnes per hectare in organic systems in India. I want to get this across and get rid of this idea that we're hearing from CropLife and others, Sri Lanka is going to starve. Actually, Sri Lanka is going to thrive. That is the reality. We've got a short time. We will submit a report to the Presidential Task Force, and that will be referenced on published science, and to show that the Presidential Directive is achievable and that going down this pathway, it will increase Sri Lanka's agricultural production. It will increase income. It'll improve the balance of trade because you're not losing money to the fertilizer companies and pesticide companies. Will increase biodiversity and, really importantly, will increase climate change resilience.
Now, the Biden administration plans to donate 500 million Pfizer coronavirus vaccine doses to nearly 100 countries over the next 2 years. International media quoting sources say that the US is likely to distribute 200 million shots this year and another 300 million in the first half of next year to 92 lower-income countries and the African Union. The donations will go through the COVAX vaccine program that distributes COVID-19 shots to low- and middle-income countries. Biden is expected to make a formal announcement in Britain today at the G7 meeting. In the meantime, the U.S. Embassy in Colombo says that President Joe Biden has appointed Dr. George E. Gabriel to the President's Commission on the White House Fellowships. In a Twitter post, it added that Dr. Gabriel, originally from Sri Lanka, was educated at the University of Kelaniya before migrating to the U.S. Now, the latest report from the Department of Immunology and Molecular Medicine of the Sri Jayewardenepura University reveals that the highly contagious UK variant is showing a major prevalence across the island, more so than the common strain reported in Sri Lanka to become the country's dominant variant. Meanwhile, with the government yesterday confirming 67 deaths owing to COVID-19, Deputy Director General of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemantha Herath, says guidelines are being modified to prevent increasing deaths and complications. In the meantime, on the vaccination front, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has instructed authorities to place orders for necessary vaccine stocks immediately to be used in an event of a third dose requirement.
Latest study report on the spread of COVID-19 in Sri Lanka conducted by the Department of Immunology and Molecular Medicine of the University of Sri Jayewardenepura was handed over to the Ministry of Health today. The report concludes that the UK-originating highly transmissible Alpha variant, which aggravated the third wave of the virus in the country, has now become the dominant variant, surpassing the common strain in Sri Lanka. According to the study, Director of the Department of Immunology and Molecular Medicine at the Sri Jayewardenepura University, Dr. Chandima Jivandara, says that biological samples obtained from COVID-19 patients reveal that this strain has extended its reach across the country. Accordingly, cases have been reported from Batiklo, Trincomalee, Kuliyapitiya, Variapola, Habaraduwa, Tissamaharama, Karapitiya and Ragama. Meanwhile, another patient infected with the Delta variant, which identifies the strain of Indian origin, has been detected from a quarantine centre in Vaskadua. He was later identified as an arrival from India. Meanwhile, Dr. Jivandara offered clarification over the speculation that a Sri Lankan is at the centre of the recent Melbourne cluster.
ඒ ඔස්ට්‍රේලියාවේ වාර්තා වෙච්ච පුද්ගලයා ලංකාව තුළට පැමිණි පුද්ගලයෙක් නෙමෙයි ලංකාව හරහා අපි කියන ට්‍රාන්සිට් පැසෙන්ජර් කෙනෙක් විදිහට ගිය කෙනෙක් විතරයි ලංකාව තුළට කිසිම වෙලාවක ඇතුළත් වීමක් වෙලා නැහැ නිසා ලංකාව තුළ සමාජයෙන් හෝ කිසිම වෙලාවක වාර්තා වෙච්ච පුද්ගලයෙක් නෙමෙයි.
Meanwhile, health authorities yesterday confirmed the death of 67 people owing to the novel coronavirus. Among them, 19 people have perished during the period from the 17th to the 31st of May, while the rest have died between the 1st and the 8th of this month. 6 people among them have died at home, while 5 among them have succumbed to the virus while being hospitalized. In addition, a week and a day-old infant is also among the dead, making him the youngest to succumb to the virus in Sri Lanka. 2 youth at the ages of 21 and 29 have also perished due to the novel coronavirus. With that, the number of COVID-19 related deaths in Sri Lanka rose to 1,910.
There has been increasing number of deaths reported in the island. We know that current increasing trend need to be curtailed, and the Ministry of Health has already started to address this issue by analyzing the deaths and then identifying the areas or points at which we can address the issue and then prevent the deaths or preventing the persons going into complications. And all these activities have been analyzed, and recommendations are made by the specialists, have modified the relevant guidelines and others, and special instructions have been issued either to prevent such happening or to mitigate the things that will lead to the death of these people.
Meanwhile, 2,735 infected patients were detected across all the districts in the country yesterday. Gampaha recorded the highest number of new infections with 545, Colombo reported 543, while Kalutara confirmed 358 cases of infection. In the meantime, Wani District Member of Parliament representing the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Kader Mastan has tested positive for COVID-19 following a rapid antigen test conducted before attending a meeting at the Prime Minister's office. On the vaccination front, 66,060 people were given the first dose of Sinopharm yesterday, while 6,828 were administered with the second dose of the same vaccine. Including the Covishield and the Sputnik vaccine so far, 2,089,320 people have received at least a single dose of the vaccine against COVID-19. In the meantime, based on 15 demands of non-medical services, the Health Services Trade Union Alliance decided to abstain from duty tomorrow from 7 a.m. till noon in protest of the Health Ministry's plan to increase allowances related to medical services by 78%. What's more, state and private banks island-wide was open today and will be open tomorrow as well for the payment of pensions. In addition, post offices have also been instructed to remain open on the 12th for this purpose. Pensioners who do not use the transportation services arranged by the government can use their pension card, national identity card or the SMS sent by the Pension Division of the Ministry of Public Administration as a travel pass. Taking into account the travel restrictions that are in place, the government arranged for transportation for pensioners. However, pensioners in some areas experience difficulties due to the lack of transportation services. Compared to the last few days, a reduction in the number of vehicles entering Colombo was witnessed today. However, a large number of vehicles were seen at certain entry points to Colombo. In the meantime, head of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 outbreak, Army Commander General Shavendra Silva rubbished social media rumours that the travel restriction will be extended from 4 a.m. on the 14th. He assured that such a decision has not been taken yet.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, Sri Lankan shares extended their gains today with financial and industrial stocks leading the pack, while global stocks paused ahead of key central bank meetings. The CSE All Share Price Index ended up 0.49% at 7,569.70 points, while the S&P SL 20 Index of more liquid stocks gained 31.63 points to close at 3,074.10. The Bourse rose 0.4% in the past week and is up 12.2% for the year so far. With that, here's Dimantha Matthew with an update on today's stock market report.
We saw the market having a positive outlook today as well, as the index started off on a positive note and moved up on a continuous basis. However, towards the latter part of the day, we saw a bit of a slowdown in the market with some profit taking coming in place. So the index managed to cross the 7,600 mark today, ending at 7,601 with a gain of around 36 points. So overall, the investors were on a mostly positive attitude, and we saw a lot of buying interest coming across the board from retail, high net worth and institutional participation. The turnover levels was onto the high side. We exceeded 3 billion today, ending at 3.2 billion rupees. Even the number of transactions were onto the high side with 25,000 transactions.
Now, the rupee continues to remain unchanged at 202.88 cents against the US dollar after ending at the same rate yesterday. Now, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Now then, the World Health Organization's head for Europe has warned travelers expecting to take advantage of the summer season to exercise caution, as the continent hasn't passed out of the danger zone just yet. Meanwhile, Indian police have resorted to new tactics to get more people to vaccinate.
The World Health Organization today urged Europeans to travel responsibly during the summer holiday season and warned that the continent was by no means out of danger in the battle against COVID-19, despite a steady decline of infection rates in recent weeks. WHO European head Hans Kluge warned that with increasing social gatherings, greater population mobility and large festivals and sports tournaments taking place in the coming days, caution must be exercised as the continent is not out of danger yet. Meanwhile, Indian police in rural communities have made some citizens who have not been vaccinated against the coronavirus wear signs with a skull and crossbones, the universal symbol for danger, stoking anger in a country where shots are in short supply. Those who were vaccinated, on the other hand, were given a sign with the colours of the Indian flag reading, "I am a nationalist."
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.